One.
Let's do this!
And welcome back to a new episode of Coffee with Toffees. For the second time, we've had some technical issues tonight, but I'm glad that you guys all stuck around. It'll be a good show. We're going to cover everything from Valve announcements to the qualifiers so far. And the show is brought to you by Dotacasters.com, where you can have folks cast your game on the amateur or the pro level. Razer, the creators of the finest peripheral in esports. And finally, Betway.com. If you want to make some money off of your sweet Dota knowledge, it is the safest and best way to do so. Now, I am joined in the studio today by a couple of folks. Guests you may know, Nahaz, the Dota professor himself, will be joining us to chat a little bit about qualifiers and what's been going on so far. And Charlie Yang, the EG manager, also in the house. Gentlemen, are you ready to get this thing started?
Let's kick it off.
Yeah. I'll take that as a yes. So let's jump right into it. The first announcement that came down the pipelines that, when I talked to you, Nahaz, I had no intention of really digging into this tonight, and we're not going to go too deep into it, but it is worth mentioning. There was a report published by Richard Lewis this afternoon on Daily Dot, in which he said that Valve has decided to, according to inside sources, and this has been rudimentarily confirmed by one of the ESL staff members, that Valve will be bringing Dota majors in-house. So from what I understand of that, it means that Valve will be handling the organizational side of things, and the production groups like ESL One, who were previously the organizers, will now be handling the production side of these major events. Now, I'm a layman. I'm not involved with a lot of LANs. I'm going to my first LAN to host on Saturdays. This is kind of all new to me. The organizers, this kind of split, is that going to cost the organizers a lot of money, or is that something where they're just sort of going to be doing what they do anyway, which is the customer-facing stuff?
It will cost them money.
It will cost them a lot of money.
It will cost them money.
Yeah, this is if you are, before we get into kind of the nuances of this and what we think is going to happen, let's make one thing clear, and that's that the major organizers, ESL, MLG, arguably even Mars TV, depending on how things fall out there, they unambiguously lose from this, and they lose potentially a lot of money. Whether and how this affects other tournaments, how this affects players and teams, that's obviously something that you can debate about. But the major organizers, this was a major blow. And I should also mention the confirmation that you mentioned, Toffees, was from James Lampkin. He's not just staff. He's the senior manager of programming at ESL. He's certainly a guy that's in position. He's in these conversations. I spoke with him, and there were multiple emails exchanged with multiple organizations today. Some of them very unhappy,
I imagine.
So this is definitely a thing. Now, the details of its implementation, what exactly Valve will be handling themselves and what exactly they will or still may choose to farm out are not clear, but the model that we were led to believe was going to be followed when the majors were first announced is apparently not going to be.
Interesting. Now, I guess this is a conversation for the time. I'm going to try to get some organizers onto the show to talk, guys, a little bit about what this means to them in terms of their process, what they go through when setting up a tournament, how this will cost them money, and what it'll bring to the table. But just off the top of our heads, and we're going to have plenty of time to work this out, and I'm going to preface with, God only knows how much of this will be true in 6 weeks, right? I mean, Valve is one of those groups that sort of decides as they go, so they could modify this system as we move towards the first major. Do you think this is a good thing on the overall or a bad thing on the overall, Nahaz?
Okay, so you're asking me specifically. My initial reaction to this was extremely negative. I was very optimistic when Valve first made this announcement of the majors, and that was largely because of the third-party organizers' increased involvement in the scene. I'm an economist. I believe that to grow an industry, you create incentives for capital to flow into that industry from multiple channels, not just people buying items, but also outside organizations, sponsors, organizers investing in your industry. The growth can't just come from consumers in most cases. And I think that under the most likely scenarios, The very optimistic projections that I had given the old model that was announced are now much more unlikely. This is not a sky is falling kind of thing. I still think probably the most likely model going forward is more or less business as usual. ESL large Dota events are probably going to be hurt by this because I think that they are going to be the ones that are going to suffer most in competition with the majors. Tournaments like Dota Pit, tournaments like the Summit, I think are going to be fine. I don't know that this affects them too much one way or the other. I think they were going to be competing with the majors and some other larger events anyway. But I really, unless Valve are willing to go, and this is the big variable in all of this is that nobody knows for sure what Valve are going to do.
Right.
Okay, Valve are notoriously unpredictable. It is possible that Valve will undergo some massive hiring, do some massive restructuring, and if that's the case, if they are willing to dedicate a lot more manpower to Dota 2 around the year-round and have people that they employ to plan these events exclusively, not developers that work on Dota 2 that for a couple months out of the year are sort of roped into helping plan an event, but people that they're hiring exclusively to plan these events and work with the community. If they're willing to do that kind of large-scale hiring and restructuring, I think this could go okay. I actually, again, being an economist, I don't understand why you need to reinvent the wheel here. I think you have organizations like ESL, like MLG, that have very talented people, and they make their business running these kinds of events. That is what they do. They have learned the lessons. They have had a proven track record of success over time. I don't know why, as Valve, you want to have to reinvent that wheel. Because inevitably you're going to have to make some of those same mistakes all over again.
Before I pose the scenario that I think is a possibility and one needs to consider, and you're an economist, so I do want to run it by you as somebody who has a lot of business background.
Sure.
I do want to get Charlie's opinion as someone who's not sort of involved with the organizer side. You know, you're a manager. You kind of support teams. You're
Charlie
involved with the
knows a
business.
lot about that stuff too.
Absolutely, but I want to get your opinion. Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? Because I know that like some hosts and some casters like Vlad said this is a great idea. So I'm curious what somebody who's on the other side, the player side, would think about this.
This is, I think, for something as big as this, I think it's the wrong mentality to think about, is this good or bad from different perspectives. Usually I'm the other way around, where I think good or bad is a very relative thing, but I think this is something that's big enough that affects the entire ecosystem of the competitive Dota 2 scene. So I think what is good is sort of good for all of us in this case. I think in the short run though, this is probably a little better for players. You insert 3 more Valve run events, they're going to be good, they're going to be a lot of money. You get more options, tournaments, whatever to choose from to play in. In the short run, I think this is good for players. They're going to want to play in these events, they get more events to choose from. In the long run though, I'm really uncertain of what this is going to look like. Right now, we don't know a lot of information. My motto is always, if you know nothing, say nothing.
Right.
So I'm not going to assume anything. And what I think is probably going to happen is this is going to be announced. Valve's going to look at all the feedback on Reddit, social media, whatever. They're going to talk to people about this. And then they'll probably adjust accordingly to what they think is good, fair, what works, what doesn't, and then we'll go from there. But I absolutely agree with Alan in that if they do something like this and they have 3 majors, they absolutely need to hire more people. They need to hire people to sort of run this year round, because this doesn't just affect the tournament scene. This also affects the hat scene.
Yeah.
Right now, there's like a glut of items that still haven't gotten into the store. I don't think, like I was talking to a Nuxie today, I don't think like the last item that was released into the market, not attached to a tournament, was New Bloom, and that was a special Valve event. That was a special Valve event. So not including New Bloom, the last item that was released into the store was December 17th.
Right. Okay.
Until then, there has been like a glut of items.
There's a huge backlog, and what bothers me about that
backlog, like people have put so much time. This is the same thing that
happened last year. This is the same thing that happened last year around this time. That when TI approached, when Valve got back from their Hawaii trip in the build up to TI, right? This is why the ESL compendium last year was mishandled. For example, there were. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not. I don't mean to imply that there were not.
Oh yeah. I know.
That is one example.
Yeah.
Right, but no, there were a lot of people that were hurt by this last year who had their items pushed back and then released more or less in competition with the TI compendium.
Makes sense. So let me pose a couple of questions to you. You guys mentioned staff, and I think that it's interesting, and a little bit of conversation has started to pop up that's complete guesswork. It's interesting that, was it about a week and a half ago, we saw an announcement by Bruno, one of the most prolific organizers and hosts in Dota 2, who's worked closely with James, who I know is involved with some of the TI staffing in the past and things of that nature, so I understand, that he's signed with Valve. And at the summit we were talking, we were like, wow, Bruno's a brilliant guy. He speaks, and I'm embellishing here, like 85 languages and like 65 coding languages, and but he really is a genius and a master of computer sciences. So it makes sense that he would be hired by Valve in that capacity. But it's interesting that a week and a half later, we're hearing about a sort of organizational standardization of these major events, and they've just hired a staff member who could be in a position to help with that? Or do you think that that's completely...
So, this is very slightly informed speculation.
Okay.
I do have a couple of people that have commented to me on this. And then, again, a couple people today. But I don't believe that Bruno has anything to do with this.
Okay. And that's, like I said,
again,
this is
it is speculation. I do have some information that others are not privy to, but I'm not going to claim to have anybody's ear here. I do want to expound on what Charlie said, because I think that the single most important thing that he said at the very beginning, and that's that there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty regarding this. And that's why, my initial reaction, I think I tweeted out when I first saw the announcement that I was very disappointed. My initial reaction was very negative, but as I had a chance to think about it throughout the day, and then knowing that we were going to talk about it tonight, the overarching thing is that we really don't know much about how this will play out, who will be involved. I stand by my statement that Valve will need to make some major changes if this is going to work well. I think the by far the most likely scenario is pretty much business as usual. I am actually a little bit disappointed with that, because I actually thought things were going to get a lot better in the next year, and I'm no longer confident that there will be the same kind of dramatic improvement. Although, I think that the same kinds of hat-related issues that we're already talking about in this context are going to continue to happen. But again, I don't know that having outside organizers involved would be any kind of magic solution there too. So, yeah. Well, I am still disappointed by this announcement, but I agree with Charlie. Let's wait and see how Valve is going to handle things before we pass judgment.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think that that's important, and honestly, I think that, and I'm not in inner circles. I don't have anybody's ear. No one tells me what happens before it happens. But it is something where when I read the announcement, initially I didn't even think of it as taking. I guess I didn't think of it as taking too much from the organizers. Now I don't understand the financials, so I know that that's going to hurt a lot. But it seems to me, as someone who worked with a large corporation in a regional setting where we had to sort of standardize a lot of different offices at the same time, a process was important. Like, to have the same staff members move from event to event seems to make sense to me.
That's I mean, that's not how this business works. The media and event planning and presentation business is very fluid. I mean, I have several friends in that industry. They're used to being more or less modular.
So you don't think it's going to be something where they can employ the same production company to move in the booths from event to event to make organization easier?
I am hoping that my big problem, especially with last year, having been there and talked to people and seen how things were done, my big problem with TI4 was that they didn't outsource nearly enough. There was way too much that was done by Valve, and Valve is not an event production company. They are a software developing company, and they do have this very unique business model that's been successful for them, where they have a very flat governing structure as a corporation, where everybody just sort of does a little bit of everything, and they're very well known for that, and it's worked in most of the things that they've done. But I just don't believe, unless Valve is willing to hire and or create an entirely new Dota 2 Majors division, I don't see why you would ask your employees who do not plan events for a living to plan events for a living.
Makes sense. All right, so I think the moral of the story here is we don't really know fully what's happening. We're going to have to kind of wait and see. I'm going to try to see if I can't get some folks. I think Richard Lewis followed me on Twitter today, so I'll see if I can't exploit that to maybe get him to do a visit and talk about the article at some point. I'd love to have some organizers come on the show. Yes, sir.
While I'm thinking about it, one more quick thing, and that's the other thing, because I'm seeing some of the comments in the chats, and I've had conversations with a number of people about this already. One of my key concerns about all this, people are saying things like, "Well, give it a year, give it 2 years," and
that
Valve
is way too long.
Yeah,
you
that
can't.
Is way too long.
People don't understand the life the life cycles in this industry are so fast. This is like saying to a baseball fan, "Okay, Major League Baseball is going to take over broadcasting." And give it 20 years, and they'll do it better than Fox.
It's actually
does.
pretty good. That's a pretty good. I will say, esports moves in. Like I said, I've worked in corporate in the corporate world, and esports moves faster than some of the corporate groups I've worked with in high sales, and it's impressive to see that. So that is absolutely true. 2 years would brutalize just about anybody if you sat back and let things fall apart for too long. That's it. We'll move past this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, since, like we said, it's still.
I just want to say, like, before we move past this.
Yeah.
I just want to say that the reason like things like this are so important, the reason like big moves like this sort of worry people and rub a lot of people within the industry the wrong way, is that so many people within this industry have dedicated their lives to this.
Yeah.
Like changes within the scene, especially drastic changes like this, or drastic changes without communication, without consultation, they affect people's livelihoods. This like stuff like you're playing with people's lives here.
Yeah,
You really are.
And so it's just something to keep in mind.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, at the end of the day, I do this as a hobby,
right.
and I can afford to have an outsider's view on all this. But there are a lot of very talented people who are young, who are not fortunate enough to have another source of livelihood, that have a hell of a lot of skin in the game here. And that's my real concern with all this. I actually think a lot of people, the element that I think gets left out of a lot of these discussions is risk. And I actually think it's a lot less risky asking companies who run these kinds of events for a living to run these kinds of events than it is for Valve to develop something entirely new within their own company. It's the time and the risk. Those are the two biggest things that concern me. I'm not saying Valve's wrecking anything. I'm not saying dead game. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying it worries me. I'm saying there is more uncertainty in the Dota 2 scene now than there was 8 hours ago. And I don't like that.
Absolutely. And I think that was a great point, Charlie, well followed up on by Alan, that this is people's livelihood. And there's a lot of folks who have a ton of skin in the game. And for a place that was unregulated to becoming heavily regulated, that's a huge transition. So I'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep you guys updated. But let's move to the next piece of news. This is a brief one. We won't talk too long about it because I don't think it's that mind-blowingly important. But keep in mind, Summer's Rift, the kings of drama over the last 2 weeks, who were in the qualifiers and then not in the qualifiers because of a situation with off-lane transitions and all of that fun, have effectively picked up 2 new players. So Tralf and Nikwa have signed with Summer's Rift going forward in MLG.
Yeah, I would say you should use the word sign very loosely.
All right, so they joined Summer's Rift.
Almost 100% certain they have not signed a damn thing.
I don't think anybody's really signed a thing, potentially. Or that's the feel I get from the team. It seems very fluid. Is that a good way to say it?
Sure.
So they did pick up 2 new players, 2 very strong players. Just based off of this change, do you think this sets them up for a better position or a worse position going into MLG? Or is that too hard to tell right now?
I think their old roster was stronger simply for the reason that they had been playing with that old roster for longer.
Right.
I mean, I think this is super new. No idea. Like, they don't have a lot of time for this. MLG starts in like what, a week and a half?
It's the weekend after this one. Yeah.
Yep. So it seems like a little bit of a, I don't want to say desperation play, but we'll see how it goes. It's important for you guys to get the news. That's
it's the same I don't know. It's the same conversation I feel like I have about NA Dota over and over. That the players are really good. I mean, there's a lot of talent on our scene, but the single biggest thing that hurts NA Dota, I feel like, is there's no cohesiveness over time. There's no roster stability, and a good team, as I think Charlie knows maybe better than anybody, a good team has to be greater than the sum of its parts.
True.
And there are way too many NA Dota teams out there that I feel like are less.
Mm-hmm. Like, we've got great players. It just doesn't seem to come together. Interesting. Anyway, so let's move past that. I want to talk about the international.
I can see in your face there that you don't entirely agree.
You don't buy that? What do you think, Charlie?
Oh, no, I agree.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe my reaction was to something else.
Okay.
I was reading chat.
Gotcha. Well,
right,
that's chat for you. So, okay. Before we move into the next thing, we're talking about qualifiers, but I just did get a message from the Team Leviathan guys and a couple of their players, since they were officially, and we're going to find out in a second when we talk about it, not knocked out, but no longer in a position to qualify for TI itself.
Mathematically eliminated.
Mathematically eliminated. A couple of their players have agreed to stop by the show and just talk about kind of the run and their plans moving forward. So at the end of the show, we're going to have them stop in for 5 minutes or so just to say hello and see them on their way. So I think that'll be a fun little chat. So just to let you guys know that's on the way. Let's jump into some international talk. And this is basically, we're going to start out real quick with the China qualifiers because I know that a lot of you probably slept through them. I myself was not in a position where I was like, God, I got to watch the Chinese qualifiers. All of these teams are super competitive. And it went, for the most part, I think the way that everybody expected it to. eHome and CDEC came out 1 and 2. The big difference here is Energy Pacemaker and Wings, from what I understand, was a pretty massive surprise, have moved into 3rd and 4th position. So Wings, you guys know Gorgon the Wonder Cow. He's on the show quite a bit. He's one of our resident brains and mathematicians. And he said that the Wings team has basically just been wreaking havoc on all of his projection models. So, Nahaz, do you know, have you followed this at all? Why is it? What's going on?
They're the Cinderellas of this ball, man. I don't think... NA is so much more uncertain. I don't think that there's a team that could win NA that would be anywhere near the kind of Cinderellas that Wings are in China. I don't even know that there's a team in EU that could win that would be. We're talking about the open qualifier team, right? We're talking about the team that came into the bracket through the open qualifiers, and we're talking about the region in China that top to bottom I think EU's better, but I probably would have called China the most top heavy of the 4 regions.
Yeah.
And to have a team come out of the open qualifiers in that region, go 5-3 in group stage play, and make the 4-team playoffs, it's just unbelievable. And I mean, their players have been magnificent. I mean, I think they're one of their two supports. Oh gosh, which one? One of their two supports is sitting on like less than 2 deaths a game.
Wow.
I mean, they're really like this team. They've been playing clean. They've been playing cohesively together. I do feel like the clock is going to strike midnight on them in the playoffs. But man, oh man, there were a couple people right around the time I did a show with Toby and another little thing on compendium predictions, and I don't even think I mentioned Wings. And there were a couple people that tweeted at me and said, "Hey, you counted up my team. Shout out to you guys. I don't think anybody saw these guys coming, and they've played some great Dota."
Absolutely, and I think that the addition in July and Super are names that we definitely recognize, and they've
definitely
been stepping up with this team.
Not. This is another Super for those of you that may not be familiar with the scene. This is the Super that you've probably heard of a little more. Plays for Vici Gaming still. This is another player.
He played. Didn't he play for CIS?
I believe
played for some other qualifier team during TI4.
Yes, that is correct. I don't. I can actually check that really quickly here.
Right.
I don't believe that it was. Well, maybe. Let me see.
I think the thing about
he's played for Rattlesnake in the past.
Yeah. That was it. I think the thing about I guess Wings that's different from so many of the other open qualifier teams is that they have experience doing this before, and that's what really sets them apart. For the most part, for any other open qualifier team, I would have said no chance, absolutely none. Because Dota's so much about experience now. If you don't have experience playing at the top level, you don't know what to expect or whatever, you're just gonna get face rolled. But they have players that know what to expect, and I think pubs in China, in general, are much more competitive, a much better place to play and sort of learn about the game at a higher level if you're actually really good. I know RTZ, Artur and Zai are a big fan of going to China. It's like a big motivation for them going to China. It's a plus. I think just the pubs.
Interesting. Well, I mean, that's a good perspective, and I think they've been doing a great job. So besides Wings, which I think was a lot of surprise to everybody, or people who weren't fans of Wings, I should say. It caught a lot of us off guard. Has there been anything else about the China qualifiers, or maybe games in your memory that you're like, this was pretty amazing, or was it pretty standard besides the Wings situation?
Well, the two big surprises, I think, team-wise, were definitely Wings overperforming, which, obviously they did very well. HGT really, I think, disappointed. I think a lot of people had this as the year that ZSMJ would finally get to play in Seattle. Yeah, and
I had them as number 2.
And I did too. For the record. And it just, I love their roster, but Air has had a reputation as a bit of a tilty player, and they just never could quite get that consistency. They finished 4-4, and I think they I want to say I want to say they split at least 2 of the series, if not all 4. They just could never really get that momentum going that you need in this kind of a qualifier. CDEC has been the best team in the qualifier. I think I had CDEC number 3, but I think eHome, CDEC, and HGT were the 3 teams that most people had 2 out of those 3 teams as their top 2. And so other than HGT underperforming, eHome maybe has been a little bit less dominant than we all thought they would be. They did lose 2 games. They lost 2 games, and their group was probably the weaker of the 2 groups. So I am if you would have told me the 2 records, I would have told you for sure that it was going to be CDEC that would drop 2 games of the group stage. I'm very surprised to see them go 8-0 in that group. But I think CDEC and eHome were, along with HGT, the best teams coming in, and they've, on balance, delivered. And Energy Pacemakers is really they are extreme. They're such a high variance team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can look like the best or among the best teams in that region one game, and they can just look completely unimpressive the next. But we've seen more good EP than bad EP in this particular tournament.
Okay, so I think that's a pretty decent summary of where the Chinese qualifiers are right now. I think that the next day or two, tomorrow is all the big games, right? Or does it start Thursday for the?
No, it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
so tomorrow should be some pretty good games. I'm excited to see what they do.
6 hours or so.
Oh yeah,
it's not even tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think Energy Pacemaker versus Wings is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Based on those two team style of play. But I think that it's going to be... Now's the time to tune into the Chinese qualifiers, in my personal opinion. That said, let's go ahead and talk about the North American qualifiers. That's what I think most folks are here to hear about or the most familiar with. I'm going to pull it up here. So what we know so far is that after the game this evening, North American Rejects have secured their position on the top of their group. They will be in the winner's bracket, and Void Boys will be taking the second place. Remember, that group was Void Boys, North American Rejects, Not Today, Leviathan, and Will Wreck while whistling. Not Today and Will Wreck, as well as Leviathan, all underperforming. Will Wreck having a very tough run, and Not Today, a lot of folks saying surprising how badly they did. Do you guys want to talk about this by group, or do you want to talk about this as an overall North American game?
Well, let's. Do you want to go through this by team?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
Let's go by the team. First, I just want to give congratulations to Steven.
Absolutely.
The swollest person in chat. The man managed to carry his team and his worthless manager to the winners bracket. I hope I see you in Seattle, buddy.
Amen, baby. Yeah, they played extraordinarily well, and I know that Korok did not play with the team. The last series I saw them play right up to MLG, I was a little concerned, messaged Greg and said that the boys would be back and they'd be ready, and they sure were. And I am thrilled to see that team doing well.
I just want to say it's really nice to see you guys get over the adversity that you've had in the last week and a half. I know I would have said 2 years ago all you tilty motherfuckers would have just disbanded on the spot, but you worked it out. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah.
All right, so the accolades handed out, everyone in love. I'm sure if Gerg were here, he'd say some nice things too. Let's talk about the other teams on the list. So North American Rejects, as an overall team, impressive performance. Did we expect any less from them? I think they were everybody was looking at them as I don't want to say the favorites, but as one of the top teams going into the qualifiers.
I had them in top two.
I had them top two.
I had them second. I mean, look, talent. I don't think anybody doubted that team talent-wise. I don't think you can with the 5 names on their roster. But, again, I come back to this that too often in NA Dota, I mean, these players are really good.
Yeah.
And we see these teams show up to events and be less than the sum of their parts. And in this tournament so far, NAR has been as good or better than the sum of their parts. Those players have played up to their potential, and it really, similar to the sentiments that Charlie was expressing, it makes me very
I
happy
don't
to see
know
that.
about up to their potential.
We'll see. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think there are several players on that team. Ush in particular, whose best Dota is still ahead of him.
Yeah,
they had really two close games that they could have potentially lost. I don't think they should have been that close.
Well, maybe that's fair enough.
So a little bit of some rocky moments, but at the end of the day, they come out ahead. They prove their point at the top of the bracket and look very good for their chance to move in to TI. Now, that's not saying anything set in stone. They still got to fight through a very hard lineup to get there. There's 4 teams that are going to be waiting on the other side. One of those teams is Void Boys. What do you guys think about their performance so far?
I'm actually really surprised they did as well without Petzl. And they don't have BN either, right?
No, I think both of those. I think both those guys left.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Petzl is the one that.
Yeah, I mean, no, both of those guys were like were the two people performing super well when they were doing well. I'm like, they just have two other people now, and they're doing a lot better. I'm super surprised.
No, it's actually, I think I screwed this up earlier when I thought it was one of Wings' players. It's actually, yeah, it's actually Xuan, Xuan, I don't know how to say his name, that is like under 3 deaths a game and over 11 assists a game as a support. Like, I mean, they've played they've played really clean. Like, I've watched a couple of their games and gone, really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because everyone's just bad.
Fair enough. But I think that they are, in a lot of ways, a surprise in this group that have stepped up, played very well, executed a lot better than a lot of folks gave them credit for when Patzel left, and have earned their way into the top of this group. So not too shabby. Here's an interesting team I want to talk about, because these guys had a lot of hype coming into the summit, and from that moment to now, basically since the patch dropped, we've seen a pretty steady decline, I think, in performance. Some say before even, and that team's not today.
I'm surprised they didn't make it out. I think that really just has to do with Void Boys, like doing as well as they did. I thought that Not Today actually had a really good chance, because they're not playing from Peru. They're playing from California, right?
Yeah, they're playing from the BTS house.
Yeah, so they don't have a ping disadvantage or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe they need it. Maybe they've gotten so used to playing with a ping disadvantage. That's actually so stupid of me to say. But,
yeah, I mean, but on the other hand, so I had Not Today as my third place team. And there were a couple of people that messaged me today and were like, look, you know, if you looked at their performance in this patch, if you looked at their performance starting like at MLG.
That wasn't this patch, though.
Yeah, it wasn't this patch, but if you looked at their recent history,
Right.
they really have not looked impressive. I mean, a lot of people focused on the fact that they got to MLG, they qualified for the summit, you know, went there, played some games, but we really haven't seen them play a great game of Dota for quite some time now.
I'd say it's like super hard to really say though. Like MLG was such a shitty event for them. Like they got there the day of the event. It was just like a huge clusterfuck for them.
No, look,
so that's hard to say. And when they got to the summit, they were so outclassed in their group.
Right.
Yeah, they really were. I know, but this is. I mean, look, they were in the group of death, right? And this is sort of me second guessing.
I mean, it was like for Raven, Not Today. Both groups were the group of death.
This is true. Yeah. But I don't know. This is sort of me second guessing myself because I had seen that team and the talent that they had in the past, and I expected them, as Charlie was saying, you know, I expected them to go through in this group. I thought this was probably the more favorable of the two groups for them to be in, but yeah, I mean, they just didn't bring it. It boils down to that.
Maybe they lost a lot of confidence in the last two events that they attended.
Yeah, you really do wonder. I think they drafted and played like a team that had lost a little bit of their swagger.
A little bit. And I think there's also something to be said for the fact that they have been away from home for a while. You know, Charlie, you made a joke about maybe they need the ping to win, but that's not, I don't think that's relevant so much as they're far away from home and they've been gone a long time.
I think they do need the comfort to win. I mean, it's like 6 Peruvian guys in California. BTS isn't really there.
No.
So it's like there's nobody to really sort of
And well, I do want to
make them feel like home.
And Charlie made this point earlier about experience,
right?
Right, and experience is not just playing the game. Experience is being used to the travel. It's being used to the environments. I mean, they say that about young players in other sports all the time. That young players in MLB and the NBA in particular, because there's such long seasons, there are a lot of games, there's a lot of travel, you're in a lot of different cities. They say about young players all the time that your first year in the league is as much as anything else. It's just about adjusting to the travel schedule.
So real quick, I do want to.
Not today looked like they may have been impacted by that.
I think that they were, and I will say LD is in chat, and he said that they have somebody looking after Not Today. They didn't just leave him in the house with keys, so they're being fed. But
I know.
Well, no, but here's the point.
They're not like
Not Today, and I can say this because I got the pleasure of hanging out with them a fair amount in the summit, and driving them around. They are incredibly nice guys. They are really good, like wonderful people to just sort of sit and chat with. The problem is, their English is not really there as a large portion of the team. So Misco talked a little bit here and there, but it was a little bit rough because I don't speak a lot of Spanish, so it was sort of a weird back and forth. But that's got to take a toll when you've been in California for 3 weeks, and you can't just go out and have fun, and there's a huge language barrier, there's a lot of issues. So that's all I'm saying, is I'm sure that creature comforts come into play here to a certain extent. Not that I'm defending their play of late, because it has been difficult to watch. In a lot of ways, but maybe that's why their performance was as bad as it has been. That said, Not Today, good guys, not great plays this week. We can all agree to that. Let's talk about the next one on the list, the team that everybody loves to love and wishes that they do better, and that's Team Leviathan. What do you think about their performance in this tournament? Is this what we all expected, or do you think that they didn't live up to their what they could do?
I'm not gonna lie, this is sort of what I expected.
Yeah. I mean, I think this Leviathan is a very young team. They've got a lot of growing to do. I feel like right now, talent-wise and play-wise, they are outclassed by a number of the teams in this event. I love those guys. I hope to see them stay together and keep doing what they're doing. I think they're doing it the right way, and I think
absolutely
for sure, 100%.
Absolutely.
Like this time next year, I want to see this team in the TI6 qualifiers, and they're a team that I will expect to see doing a lot better then. But right now, I think it was important for them. I think for them, the biggest thing was to get the invite to go and play the games and play their style of Dota and do the best they can and learn from it.
Absolutely, Charlie. What were you saying?
I was gonna say that I really like the fact that they sponsorless just got a team house.
Yep.
Went to where are they in Florida?
Florida.
They went to Florida, got their shit together, like created an environment where they could like train and learn, and really develop as a group.
Absolutely.
Which is something you don't really see. And like they went from like a bunch of like a pub stack to being invited to the TI qualifiers, and I think that says a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a triumphant story, and those who watch the show know I used to give them a hard time because less than a year ago they would show up in lobbies trolling and having a good time because they were just SECS pub stacking, and then they decided to go serious and sort of gave us a grassroots story into the qualifiers. And like Nahaz said, I hope that they stay together. I hope to see them at TI6 qualifiers, and if they continue to progress, in my personal opinion, at the level with which I've seen them progress in the last 6 to 7 months, I think that they could be competitors to get to TI in a year. If they continue down the road that they have been really fighting their way down, because they train pretty gosh darn hard. So Leviathan, good luck to you guys. I think that you're a homegrown team that we like to root for. Very different than the way a lot of other teams have been formed of late. Which takes us to a new team, or not a new team, but a team that's had some roster changes and some issues. Will wreck while whistling.
The second word is the operative one.
Yeah, I thought they'd do better than this.
I didn't think they'd finish at the bottom.
Yeah.
No.
I mean the whole issue with Mike trying to join Summer's Rift probably was not ideal for their chemistry, to put it lightly. But I know Mike's a pretty straightforward guy. Like business is business for him. So I don't know if he had so much of a problem with like after his teammates found out that he wanted to leave, but maybe they did.
Right.
And like at the same time, if you already want to leave your team, I can't imagine that the environment is that great.
Mm-hmm. So tough. Do you think that that's it? You think tough environment equaled bad performance, or
Probably.
I mean, why did
they were doing well beforehand?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is when you watch them in Canada Cup and places, Will Wreck While Whistling did well, but right now they're getting wrecked while whistling, and it was brutal, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say about it. That team kind of just fell apart, and I mean, yeah, the stats aren't pretty. I'm not going to belabor the point.
Gotcha.
We're all, obviously, roster-wise, chemistry-wise, there were certainly concerns going into that, but yeah,
I
even
also-
with those concerns, I expected them to do better than they did.
It wasn't a blowout though. I do want to say that like if you look at the way the round robin went, it's like no team just like got completely blown out.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like they had the same record as Leviathan. They just split games.
Sure.
So I mean, I think it was like aside from Nar, it was sort of competitive.
No, I mean but that's what was frustrating. Like they played, I think. Yeah, I mean I want to say they gave Leviathan both of their 2 wins.
Yeah.
Wheel did, and it was just like they would play really well, and they had a bunch of games where they played well but not well enough to win.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, part of my reaction is just it was frustrating watching them. You felt watching them like this team, if they'd have really come to play,
Right.
could have done a lot better than they did.
Sure.
No, Charlie's right. I mean, I shouldn't be that negative. I mean, I like these guys, but yeah, it was a bit frustrating watching some of their games.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. These are teams, these are guys that I've watched in the NEL, that I've watched in the SCCS when I covered it, that are NA Dota staples that a lot of us wanted to see do well. Sleesel, IX Mike, Derp, Relic, these guys are staples that everybody's who's into the NA Dota scene has at least heard of and wants to see finally get something running. And I was sad to see them sort of fall out. But it is what it is. They finish on the bottom. Let's move to Group 2, where some interesting stuff happened that I don't think a lot of people were expecting, and except maybe Root Gaming, because I had Root's manager came on the show, Static, last week, and I said, who is your sleeper pick? Who do you think is the team that's going to shock everyone when it comes to qualifiers tomorrow? And he told me Complexity Gaming is much better than everyone thinks they are, and they are going to really cause some trouble in these brackets. And Complexity Gaming is looking very good right now, as I think they've secured officially, if I understand. Are they officially number 1, or is there a chance that Mousesports can pull ahead?
They're officially number 1, and they're also up in their first game against eHug, so I think that pretty much secures it.
Right.
So Complexity looking pretty good. Did you guys expect this from Complexity Gaming?
Yes. I think mostly because I sort of knew what their team bootcamp / situation was going to be like, and I think they were better supported and better funded than everyone, sort of all the other teams in their group except for Mousesports. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time with Frankie in Chicago. I don't think they had it completely together. So, and I didn't expect anything really out of the Open Qualifier team. And then I thought it was really going to be between Cole, Mouse, and Root in that group. And I think as for how well Cole is going to do, I still want to see. I'm still pretty. I want to see how they're going to do against NAR.
Right.
Before I really say this is like a real surprise for me. Because I knew they were going to do well, and Ebony's taking care of them really well.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I spaced on this. I had Root as my 4th place team over Complexity, just because I looked at the rosters and I didn't. I'm not sure I knew that both Fly and Moon were going to be playing for Complexity, and even if I had known, the big thing there is that when you have a big roster change like that, you need some time to get that together. You need some time to get all those players on the same page. I mean, when you look at it, like, Charlie talked about experience earlier, and that's where I think Fly really brings a lot to the table. I mean, he's played on the highest levels of Dota. He's played with some excellent teams. And
he's a LAN winner.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, if I were to make a list of in terms of how I would rate these players right now, if I were going out and making a team, Fly's probably on the top. Would be on my top 5 in that region. I really like him. I was surprised when Secret let him go. Frankly, Charlie probably thinks I'm nuts, but
yes and no.
But
I mean that's complicated, and that's another team's business. I don't really want to get into.
Fair enough. But with Fly back and playing some wonderful support games, he had at least one. I think it was the very first series of the tournament where he played a Rubik against a Shadow Fiend on the other side. I think it was against Root, and he stole Requiem like 2 or 3 times. Used it in team fights. I mean, it was one of the brilliant Rubik games.
I think he was really underrated on Secret.
Yeah.
I don't think he got as much credit as he should have gotten.
Completely agree. I mean, I was a big fan of his with Secret. I was a big fan of his with Fnatic too. So, I think Moon back kind of his first game or two looked a bit shaky. He really in that opening series against Root was the player that looked the least stable, but he's really flattened out since then. And I think in this meta right now, I mean, this has been true for a long time, really. It's not specific to 6.84, but if you have a stable player in your offlane role, that's a huge asset to a team.
Absolutely. And this is a team that, and Grant actually brought it up in chat, we talk about Fly's LAN experience. Complexity has a Han pedigree, and almost I think all of their guys have been to multiple LANs for other game events. So if they make it through this and they get to TI, they have a good LAN pedigree potentially going forward in terms of comfort. Because I think that's always a question with teams that don't have a lot of experience at LANs. How are they going to perform when they get to the big show? That said, Complexity Gaming, I think, has played really, really well. From the games that I watched, it seems to me like they deserve to be in this number 1 spot in this group right now.
Yeah.
The only one who could potentially challenge that, they split 1-1 with. It's actually the only game that they dropped as of now, and that is to Mouse Sports. So Mouse Sports is a team. A little bit of controversy when they formed up and moved to Canada. So folks chatting about that. Capitalist had a good shot fired today during the broadcast, which I thought was pretty cleverly inserted in there and hidden. But playing well, are they playing up to what you guys expected to see from Mouse Sports?
No.
Yeah, definitely not.
No. Their loss against Cole, that was like, I don't think they should have lost that game. And that's definitely on them. Their split versus Root, however, because like I talk to those players a lot. There is I would chalk that up to an anomaly. That something happened outside of the game that I'm not going to get into. Pretty significant.
Okay.
That affected the outcome of that game. So I'm going to say that game was an anomaly.
Okay.
And then whether or not they can bounce back from that, we'll see.
So they had some challenges up front. They seem to be playing better now.
Well, let me actually ask Charlie, if you don't mind, without going into any specifics. Do you expect this team to be this team during the playoffs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it really so this the thing that happened is not like a. I mean, we'll see how mentally strong these players are.
Okay.
That's it. It's something that was out of their control.
Fair enough. I don't want to get you saying anything more about that, but you know, the biggest thing is I believed when we made the predictions. I continue to believe if Mouse plays their best Dota, they win.
Yeah, no, I agree. If they can get their shit together and get back on track and get over this thing that happened, then I think they have all the tools and all the best tools to win. I think they have the most experienced and talented players in this group. They are also the most well-funded team in this group. They have the most logistical support and everything. So on paper they should win. It's just a matter of can they get their shit together for this or not.
And they've got a tall order ahead of them. If Complexity maintains their position with eHug right now, then Mouse Sports essentially has to go through 3 teams that have looked very good to get into the first position, right? So they've got to make their way through the lower bracket potentially. Do you think they're going to have the mindset to be able to pull that off? Because there's not a lot of recovery time. Like, this is all happening tomorrow.
I think there is. You have 3 players that like went through the hell that was Liquid, Liquid going up to TI, and they came back and they managed to like have that incredible run through TI. Like they were a wildcard team, and they managed to pull it through all the way past invited teams. So I think it's possible. Just really depends. I mean, it's not like any of these players are strangers to losing.
So, by the way, Grant has actually pointed out in chat
that.
something that I had spaced on, and that's that, and I believe this is right, that if Root wins out against the 2 worst teams and Mao's loses 1 game against Unknown,
Right.
That's true.
they're out.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, that's a dangerous position for them to find themselves in. And I think that even if they don't get knocked out, which, I tend to say they're probably going to make it through, that says a lot about them finding themselves in that spot in the first place. Interesting. So,
Well, we'll see. I mean,
yeah.
We'll see. I mean, their fate is still in their hands.
yeah,
that's true.
If they 2-0 Unknown, then they're in.
then they're golden.
So yeah, their fate is definitely within their hands.
And then the other thing that I don't think I've said yet that I wanted, it occurred to me during the discussion of the China region is, look, we talk all the time about how best of 3s are different than best of 1s.
Right.
Best of 3s are different than 2-game series as well. Mm-hmm. It's a different feel. And I think I like Mao's chances in, I think this is where the veteran players and experience is even more at a premium when you talk about these best of 3 elimination series. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as they don't have to play NAR to make it to the finals, I still think Mao's is in Seattle. But yeah, I mean, Grant's point in chat is well taken. Yeah. That they're not even out of the group phases yet.
Tough. It is not an easy road ahead, but it's a road that they, like you said, have under their control. That takes us to another team that is unknown to a lot of folks. It was sort of a surprise, especially if you're Grant to come out of the open qualifiers, as I think that he thought Boreal Esports, and I think he owes a charity a lot of money at this point. Team Unknown, what have you guys thought of them? I'm going to pull up their roster while you give us your opinions on what you thought about that team so far.
Kotaro, don't give him Huskar.
Fair.
Exactly.
Don't give him Huskar. We'll see what happens beyond that. I was super surprised. Expected Summer's Rift to get through, but
yeah,
shit got fucked up, and yeah.
So
what else is there to say, right?
Right.
I mean.
Well, I mean, so they beat out some teams that we thought were going to be sort of, I don't want to say the shoo-ins, but the favorites to win out in that insane best-of-1 chaos that was open qualifiers. Right. They got through. The roster is Kotaro, Atune, Greedy, Ztalk, and Excel. And I'll be honest, these are players that I am not overly familiar with. I don't think the average viewer is familiar with. Have you guys had a chance to actually watch their games in this tournament so far? And if you have, other than the Huskar thing, have they made an impact on you?
I watched a Kotaro Ursa game where he tore it up pretty badly. But again, like I believe, I caught bits and pieces of 2 of their wins. I watched one of them all the way through, and it was against Ehug. And so I was kind of like, I like Ehug. I mean, Justin's a pretty darn good player, but I mean, I didn't know what to make of that. I mean, the game that they won that I saw had Kotaro on Ursa, and it was they had a Storm Spirit in that game. I mean, they looked pretty good, but I don't know. I'm not over.
They just lost against Root.
Yeah.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. They had a Huskar.
So I think that nobody really expected them to come out on top of this bracket.
Charlie, they didn't have a Husker.
The last game?
Yeah.
I thought they did.
I don't think so. I'm looking at Earthshaker, Clockwork, AA, Shadowfiend, and Sven.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
Either way, they lost the game, and I think that the key here is this. Unknown, however they got here through a very difficult process. And, it's nice to see a team that came through an open get some vision on a large stage. That said, competitors for TI, not at this moment, but interesting to watch them play. Here's an interesting team for me, Root Gaming. What do you guys think about this? Pedigree strong, performance has been a little weak.
Yes. I mean, yes. I don't think. I think. I don't think they'll. I don't think they'll get out of groups. If I think Mouse is a stronger team, but I don't know. We'll see. It's still really possible for them. If Mouse somehow chokes, they drop a game against Unknown, and Root closes out the series 2-0. It's definitely a possibility. But even despite that, I think Mouse is still a stronger team. I think there are like a lot of weaknesses on Root. I was talking with Sahil about this earlier. There's it's a lot of especially in their series against Mouse, there are so many glaring issues. They picked a 5-man lineup. They didn't really 5-man that much, and then they didn't get Guardian Greaves when they're trying to push. Leshrac didn't get an early BKB, and then
I saw that game.
It's like every time they tried to push, their itemization just let them get blown up by Shadow Fiend, Clockwork Initiation, and a Lion ult.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are two. The way I think about it, to expound on what Charlie said, is that there are really two aspects. There are two aspects to Dota drafting. One of which everybody talks about, and the second, not enough people talk about. One is obviously the heroes that you draft against the enemy heroes, but then the other is just the execution. Do you play that lineup to maximize and really leverage its strengths against the enemy lineup? And I don't feel like Root has consistently put those two pieces together. It really has been, in every game I've seen of theirs, there have either been some serious mistakes in one of those two areas. And yeah. I mean, I had them as fourth place ahead of Complexity, and they definitely have not delivered.
So let me ask you this, and this is I asked Static this as well. Root Gaming, it seems like they've found a roster that's young, that maybe needs some work together, but has potential. Do you think TC and Fluff and stuff finally found a place to call home moving into majors? Or does this feel like another team that was put together for TI?
No, this after TI.
Okay.
After TI, I expect almost all of these teams. Actually, after TI, I'm just going to say I expect all of these teams to change.
All right. Well, there you have it. So Charlie going on record saying he expects all the teams to change, and I think that's probably pretty accurate. So Root, we'll see what happens to them as they move out of this one. Here's the last team. This is a team who was mentioned in the compendium for a possible direct invite. And then Team EHUG was listed on the compendium, if I remember correctly. Or am I thinking of somebody else? Forget what I said, because I can't guarantee it's true, so we'll pretend it never happened. Team EHUG, a team that's been around for a while. We see a second...
they weren't they? I believe.
They were, and then they were dropped, and they got in because of Summer's Rift. That's what it was.
Right.
So they were mentioned.
That was the big puzzler that nobody understood. That when the initial predicted the 10 teams, predicted direct invites, when that was first released, EHUG was on the list, and then initially they weren't even invited to the qualifiers.
Yeah. That's what that's right. That was the confusion that Summer's Rift had their issue. Team EHUG steps in to fill their role, and they go 0-4 as of now. I believe that Complexity took the first game and is working on the second. I can't look at Twitch or my computer will crash.
Yeah, that is what is happening.
But it looks like it's going to be
likely lose.
It looks like it's going to be 0-6 for them. This is a bad performance? Is this what we expected, or is this just way worse than we thought it would be?
This is way worse than I thought it would be. I didn't think they would make it out of groups, but not like this.
Yeah, I expected to, and let's be real here too. I mean, these games have been pretty ugly. Like the last one was the last game that they just got done with was they got outscored 16-1 in kills. The game was over at 18 minutes. So I mean, their games have not been pretty.
I don't know what this draft is either. It's like I'm watching this right now. This is really weird.
You have a Night Stalker, a Riki, and a Bounty Hunter with a Zeus and Mirana. I don't.
And then, I don't know. How do you stop the D push of Chen and DK?
Oh, you pray that somehow you're able to get a bunch of pickoffs in. It's weird though. Like that. How are you gonna? Are you really gonna have Bounty Hunter level 6 during that first night to have Night Stalker get off his ganks early? Because that's what you've got to do.
I mean, I don't think. To be fair, I also don't think they're taking this game that seriously. They know they're mathematically eliminated, so they're just like whatever.
All right, that's fair. That's fair, actually.
So that said, and I don't want to get into too much game theory because folks listening to the podcast will be extremely confused if they're not also watching the draft at the same time. That said, though, Team EHUG, I think, has had a disappointing showing, has had struggles all along the way. Is there a glimmer of hope here from what you saw, or do you think this is the end of the road for EHUG for the second time around?
No, this is the end of the road for them. They also this current roster that they're playing with now is also relatively new. They had a whole bunch of changes throughout the year. Yawar was on that team at one point. Trouf was on that team at one point. But they did a lot of switching up. I think this roster is only maybe 2 or 3 weeks old. And that's it. It's unfortunate. I think maybe if they had more time, they could have done better. I know Jaw flew out. Jaw originally lives in Hawaii. He flew out to the West Coast to play these qualifiers. But that's what it is. Shout out to Frankie.
It is what it is. So that said, guys, it is that's the North American qualifiers. Let me ask you this as we sort of wrap up this conversation: who has been the most impressive or the most surprising for you, and who has been the biggest letdown? Nahaz?
Specifically in the NA qualifiers?
Yeah, specifically in the NA qualifiers.
And you want player or you want team?
Either one. I was thinking team, but if you've got a player who really stood out in your mind, I feel free to share that.
Well, I mean, the problem is with team is just it's too obvious. It's like, Void Boys has just been. I really, honestly, I think a lot of people probably made this mistake in their compendium predictions that. When I found out that, for whatever reason, I had the impression that Patsol's absence was sort of temporary and that he would be back. And I remember when we were first talking about that on the show when everything was announced, and Grant was like, no, Patsol is gone for good.
Greg,
I was like,
Greg, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, Greg.
It would have been wrong to have a whole show go by without at least one of those, Charlie. So thank you.
Okay,
look at him right now. He's like, how is Nar not the surprise?
Right.
Because we all expected him to do well. Get over yourself.
Oh my God! Seriously, that's so stupid, Greg. Your boys were the favorites and they delivered. That's good. You take that as a compliment.
Sometimes
you don't want us to be talking about your team as the surprise because that means we all thought they sucked.
Sometimes you just have to ignore Vulcan. What is Hip TV in Twitch chat, and so
Vulcan
big surprise player,
what is Hip TV?
right?
Oh, yeah.
Who is your biggest disappointment in this tournament, Nahaz?
I mean, wow. To give I have been honestly my biggest disappointment. It has been in the overall level of play. I really. Fuck you, Charlie. I really did. I thought that. I thought these games would be a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought the Dota would be a little bit better, but I mean, it really. The roster instability, I continue to believe these players are really good. The roster instability has clearly taken its toll. I mean, but to me, you compare the Dota that's been played in the Chinese qualifiers and the Dota that's been played in the NA qualifiers, and NA Dota really suffers by comparison. We have a long way to go. I think we have the people to make it happen, but We need a lot more team cohesiveness in the next year if we want the TI6 qualifiers to be better.
I can agree with that. Charlie, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment.
At the risk of being really boring, I'm actually gonna say the same thing as Nahaz. For me, biggest surprise was Void Boys with the loss of Patzel and Bien. I didn't expect them to do well at all. And yeah, I guess biggest disappointment is I guess level of play. I don't know if that's like a real disappointment, because I mean, when like idiots like Korok can sit at the top of the leaderboard. Alright, yeah, I'll say that's the biggest disappointment. When idiots like Korok can sit at the top of the leaderboard, you know that the entire region sucks dick. Okay.
Ouch, painful. Let me ask you this then before we go. Skim brought it up in chat. He brought up a quote that was published a while back ago, now infamous: for every RTZ there is an MSS. Do you think MSS has taken steps to proving that that's not true, that he's a competitor and has managed to go a long way outside of just North American Dota?
Yeah, I mean, that article was, like, that phrase was so bad. I actually always thought Arif was, like, a fucking player.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Arif's definitely a player. I think, like, when he was on EG, he really just needed direction. He needed, like, direction and someone to learn from. Like, he was definitely a player.
He was not a bad player.
No, and then Mal's.
I don't know where people get.
Mal's he was playing with Euros, so we'll blame it on that. But like, Arif's a fucking player.
And like, I don't. It's so, I don't know. Every time I hear, well, not every time, but a lot of the time when I hear people talk about MSS, like, I feel like they're talking about a different player than the guy that I've watched, because, like, he was a good player on EG. He was a good player on Maz. Like, those teams had issues, for sure.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I like when I hear people talk about MSS as like a disappointment, I'm like, is this really, like, he's looked pretty good to me in a lot of the games. I mean, really, there are a lot of guys out there that sort of struggled and finally found a stable team situation and really blossomed. I mean, this is about finding the right other four guys and the right sponsor and the right environment. You know, MSS to me has all the hallmarks of a highly individual. Korok is the same way. Like, those two guys, watching them play individually, they're really good. I really hope that they both have finally found the right team environment.
I hope so too. And guys, that is all the time that we have for this portion of the show. Nahaz, it's been great having you, as well as Charlie. Do you guys have any last shout outs or thoughts you want to share before we go to commercial and then come back with the guys from Leviathan?
I would like to say that I'll be really simple. Fuck you, Greg.
All right. There's the shout out from Charlie Yang, the manager for EG. And Nahaz, any last thoughts?
Shout out to everybody at the hub. I think they've been doing great work so far. I was bummed to not be able to join them because of family stuff, but they're having a great time, and I think they're doing great work. And shout out to Grant. Everybody thinks I flamed Grant in a recent tweet. It was actually not my intent to flame Grant. I was actually I was pissed at him because I actually kind of like watching Grant stream from time to time. But anyway, shout out to him and to all of our NA Dota fans.
So, guys, we appreciate you being here. For those of you listening and hanging out, we're going to go to a commercial real quick. And when we come back, we're going to have Flying Zebra and Shane from Leviathan to just stop by and chat a little bit, as they were mathematically removed from the qualifiers today, to talk about maybe their future plans and where they're going from here. And remember, Charlie said that he thinks that every single team will shift, change, and possibly fall apart after this tournament. We're going to ask Leviathan specifically if that's in their plans. So stick around. We'll be right back after this.
Shout out to Chad.
Razer Comms is a free all-in-one communication tool that allows you to stay in touch with friends both in and out of the game. With features such as friendless, groups, mobile SMS forwarding, and call notifications, Razer Comms is a communication solution for the dedicated gamer. Razorcom's minimal in-game overlay has a panel that grabs all your messages and lets you see who is speaking in a voice call without interrupting your game.
Now I'll always know who's breathing into the mic. It's always me.
By pairing Razorcom's mobile with your PC, your friends can call you, no matter where you are.
Welcome back, guys, from that commercial break. We're calling the boys from Leviathan right now, so we'll get them on. This is Flying Zebra and Shane, who I believe is serving as the coach right now for the boys at the Leviathan house. As soon as we get them here into Skype chat, we will chat a little bit about the qualifiers and where they're going from here. So how are you guys doing this evening?
Doing good.
Hey, there he is. This Flying Zebra, so we'll pull it up here. No cameras, guys. We're going to go with the pictures just so that you know who we are talking to. Shane, you are coaching, correct? Is that your position with the house right now? Shane Milky.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had my mic muted. Yeah, I'm at the coach, or I'm coaching them at the Leviathan house.
Awesome.
Name's Big Bad Bird in game.
That's
Some
right,
people
Big
know
Bad
me.
Bird.
Yep.
So Big Bad Bird and Flying Zebra here. Let's talk a little bit about qualifiers. Up to this point, I know that when you guys got the invite, Zebra, there was a lot of excitement. We talked to you at the house live when it came in. I mean, honestly, I would say that based on what I saw 6 months ago for some of the YouTube videos that were coming out, this was a huge achievement for you guys to get invited to the qualifiers. Do you feel like that's true, or do you feel like this isn't enough, that you should have gone farther?
We were disappointed in our performance, obviously, but it has, been a long way to come, and still happy to have been here.
Yeah, for me, I've known them from their last team before I was on this team.
Okay.
I used to play on Root, and they were flip side during the last qualifiers or something. And we both weren't playing in them on our respective teams, and we both felt like we should have been in them. There was some teams that we had been doing pretty good against that were in it, so we were pretty bummed about it. But we all met each other at TI, so that was pretty fun. I actually met them there. And then when we teamed up, we were believing that we would definitely get invited, just based on how we were playing and how we felt like we were going to keep playing.
Well, and you guys have sort of had a grassroots vibe in a lot of ways to what we've seen Leviathan do over the last X amount of months. And it's been very organic. You've spent together. You've kind of slogged your way through tournaments to get noticed and worked your way up to this point. And that's been encouraging not only to, I think, people in the scene, but folks who are trying to do the same thing. Nahaz said it when he logged off. He said, don't go anywhere. Do you guys have plans for the future, or is that still too early, or still have to sort of just deal with the fallout of what happened tonight?
We are already looking forward to the next majors and weekly tournaments where we can prove ourselves, qualifying for any LAN. We really just want to get to a LAN. That's our main goal.
Awesome.
So the next chance we get, we're really going to work hard for it. We don't plan on splitting at all. We still, do fine as a team.
So the hope is to prove Charlie wrong. That's exciting to hear. Shane, so I should ask this, are you guys staying in the house, or are we all going back to our prospective homes now that our TI run is over?
I'll be staying for a little while. I think a couple of the Leviathan members are going to be heading back home shortly for some real-life things. I'll probably be joining another NA team at some point, and I might do coaching for them here and there until I get a team. But I'm probably just going to be here for a couple more weeks. I think Zebra's staying for a while, though.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so tell me, are you guys planning on staying there indefinitely? Is there a lease on this house, or is this just Leviathan's committed to making it happen and the house is just going to stay the way it is?
For me, it's I just want the best Dota environment possibly for me, because at home it was a little hard.
Yeah.
Here it's very easy to just focus on Dota. Really, really easy. So yeah, I'm really happy with being here, so I'm going to do what I can to stay here. Some other players definitely wanted to stay for similar reasons, just family and real life pressures that make it hard to focus on the game and what we want to do. So I think one or two of us might be going home to visit family for a little while, and then probably coming back depending on what's going on. So, but we do plan to stay together, and
Nice.
we're all getting along and looking forward.
No, that's exciting. I mean, I think that our hope was to see you in a few majors, but it sounds like, when we talked earlier about where we hope to see you guys in the TI6 run-ups, that's a real possibility, and that's exciting to those of us in the North American scene who like to see teams stay together. So I appreciate that. I hope that the fans do as well. You guys, mathematically, you're knocked out of the TI qualifiers. That's tough. It's got to be rough news to hear. Do you plan on taking some time off, or do you guys think that you're going to go right back into hardcore Dotaing tomorrow and getting ready for the next big tournament?
We are gonna take some time to just clear our heads and take some time for ourselves. I think we're planning to go out tomorrow and just hang out for the whole day. Maybe play some pubs still, but we're always still playing Dota and want to play Dota. But sometimes we need a day or two to just take a break.
Absolutely. Shane, you got brought in as a coach. I think it was 2 weeks ago. You showed up. You got to the house. Were you coaching the team prior to that, or was it just at your arrival at the house?
I was coaching them for about 2 weeks before that.
Okay.
Basically, I was playing with a team called Black Sheep,
Mm-hmm.
and it became. I team hopped for a little while. I was on Black Sheep, I was on Rude, I was on Complexity, I was on a few different teams, and then we did a little desperation move to try to get into the qualifiers as Black Sheep, and it became apparent that we were no longer a contender at all. This was before the open qualifiers were announced or anything.
Right.
And basically, when it became apparent that we were no longer a team that would be in contention for a slot, the team sort of disbanded, and I talked to Leviathan about if they still wanted to coach, and they did. That was about a month ago. So I coached them for about 2 weeks before this.
Nice. So that said, as we move out. Really, I just wanted to give you a chance to come on here and address fans, people who might be viewing, people who I think a lot of folks may have been exposed to Leviathan in a new light with this tournament. I mean, there's the mass appeal. Everyone's sort of watching the qualifiers. What should we look forward to in the future from you guys, and what do you want to say to the fans who sort of supported you along the way?
Well, I think you can expect a much higher level of play in the future from these guys. I think we're not so disappointed about having lost, if I can speak for them. I think they're more disappointed about the fact that we didn't play as good as we had been, immediately before this. When we were scrimming mainly Euro teams, we were having really good results against, teams that are much stronger than what we lost to. And it's just disappointing to have not performed just for, how we're perceived as we would have liked to perform.
I understand that, absolutely. Zebra, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty much like we all had the same mindset that we just really wanted to have our best showing possible, like playing the game that we know we can play. And our first day just really felt so bad. We were really disappointed in our day one performance, and we really it pushed us to really play our best or better in day two, but day one really it was painful.
Let me ask this question, and it feels a little bit maybe insensitive at this point since we did just get knocked out. But I do want to address it because in a lot of the casts, Coddle Guy, Dakota commented on the fact that he felt like you guys looked uncomfortable, that you didn't look like you were playing heroes that you enjoy or knew very well, that you were trying out new things. Was that the case, or do you feel like you were playing drafts that you were comfortable with, it just wasn't executing the right way?
It maybe it's like a combination, but I'd say it's mostly the latter.
Okay.
But there was like a few things that maybe could have been different picks that a little more comfortable, but maybe it didn't seem as ideal for the game. But in terms of like, for example, I think game one versus Nard, that was like the most uncomfortable and out of this kind of draft and laning in general, and we were all like off our game at that point because we knew like nothing felt right.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you weren't completely off in the sense of you were drafting things that you wanted, and I think that We saw some moments of brilliance. We saw some tough situations, but at the end of the day, I can honestly say, as someone who's a fan of North American Dota, I was glad to see you guys in the tournament. I think that you showed that you are on your way to really setting yourselves up for TI6 and the majors, and I'm excited to see what comes out of you guys in the future. And honestly, I'm ecstatic to hear that you're staying together and that you're planning to keep moving forward as a strong team Leviathan. That means a lot to me, and hopefully the rest of the folks as well. Do you have any last thoughts before we sign out for the night?
On the last question you asked, I wanted to just point out that when I went over some of the replays from day one, after the first game, we didn't really care about because we knew that was just really awful, nervous and pressure getting to us. But the games against Void Boys, I felt like we were starting to get more and more comfortable, and even game 2 versus Nar. But there was a lot of individual plays that were uncharacteristic and just maybe a little bit of pressure and just nerves that kind of threw our game for a loop, and then we were kind of a little lost probably. And day 2 we were way more on point. So I think just those individual plays going wrong really just put us behind, and we were in a spot that we really didn't want to be.
Absolutely.
I think we're just a little different. I think we actually probably would have owned our at least Void Boys.
RazorCom is a free all-in-one communication tool.
Awesome. I mean, and it seems like it's something where comfort has a lot to play into it, like you said, maybe a little bit of pressure, and as that starts to go away, hopefully things will continue to improve and pick up. Shane, do you have any last thoughts before we sign out?
Not too much for me. I just think in the future you guys can expect good things from these guys. I probably won't be coaching them much longer, but I think you'll see good things from these guys in the future.
I'm excited to hear that, and I hope and I believe that will be the case. Zebra, Shane, I appreciate you guys stopping by the show tonight. I know that it's going to be potentially a tough evening or a lot of fun, depending on how much alcohol ends up being utilized at the end of the night.
I think that'll be tomorrow night.
Okay. Tonight's for thinking. Tomorrow night's for obliterating all thought.
Oh, yeah.
That said, though, guys, I really appreciate you coming by. I loved watching you play. I was really glad to see you get that invite, and look forward to great things coming from you. So have a great evening. Thank you so much for stopping by the show. For everybody who's watching, I do want to put a big shout-out to our sponsors, Dotacasters.com, Razor, and Betway.com, for supporting small content creators like myself. It is really nice to help pay the broadcasting bills with that support. That said, there is one sponsor spot left on the show, so if you are interested in sponsoring the show, it is ridiculously cheap. If you want to sponsor it with a birthday wish, you can probably afford to do that. But we are looking for one more sponsor for the show. Guys, have a wonderful evening. To all the fans who are watching, we appreciate your support. And as always, boys and girls, Toffees out.
All right.